The stagecoach wheels kicked up clouds of dust as it rumbled towards Sweetwater, Texas, carrying Daisy Caldwell and her secret, a secret that could get her killed. It was 1875, and the war had been over for a decade, but some wounds never healed, some grudges never died, and some men never stopped hunting. Daisy pressed her forehead against the window glass, watching the vast expanse of prairie roll by. Her dark hair was pinned severely beneath a black hat, her blue gown modest and unadorned. She'd been Diana Beaumont once, the daughter of a Union general who'd made powerful enemies during the war. Now she was Daisy Caldwell, a widowed schoolteacher headed west to start a new life. At least that's what her papers said. "First time out west, madam." The elderly woman sitting across from her smiled kindly, her face a roadmap of wrinkles. "Yes," Daisy replied, the lie coming easily after months of practice. "I've accepted a teaching position in Sweetwater." Brave girl. "It's still wild country out here. My son runs the general store there. Been established 5 years now. I'm Mrs. Holloway, by the way. Pleased to meet you. I'm Daisy Caldwell." The name still felt foreign on her tongue. 6 months ago, she'd been Diana Beaumont of Boston, attending society functions and managing her father's household. Then the first attempt on her life had come a bullet through her bedroom window that missed her by inches. The second attempt had been poison in the tea service. The third was when her father had finally acted, arranging her death in a carriage accident and sending her west with a new identity. "They need a firm hand with those children," Mrs. Holloway continued. "Last teacher, poor Miss Jenkins, left after just 4 months. Said the boys were unmanageable." Daisy smiled. "I believe I can handle a few rowdy boys." The stagecoach hit a rut, bouncing its passengers. Daisy grabbed the leather strap to steady herself, her gaze turning to the other passengers, a drummer with his sample cases, a young couple headed to California, and a man who had barely spoken since boarding in Fort Worth. He wore a dark suit, but something about the way he carried himself made Daisy uncomfortable. His eyes, when they occasionally met hers, were calculating. As the sun began its descent, Sweetwater appeared on the horizon, a collection of wooden buildings stretching along a main street, with houses scattered beyond. The stagecoach pulled to a stop outside the hotel, and Daisy gathered her belongings, feeling the familiar knot of anxiety. Would her deception hold? Would she be safe here, Miss Caldwell? Called the driver, handing down her trunk. "Welcome to Sweetwater." Daisy thanked him and surveyed the dusty street. Men in wide-brimmed hats moved with purpose, horses were tied at hitching posts, and a few women in calico dresses hurried along the boardwalk. It was exactly as she'd imagined the West would be, and nothing like the Boston she'd left behind. "Miss Caldwell," a tall, balding man approached. "I'm Edward Becker, chairman of the school board. We've been expecting you." "Mr. Becker, thank you for meeting me. Mrs. Holloway's daughter-in-law has prepared a room for you at their home until we can arrange more permanent accommodations. School begins Monday next." "I trust that gives you enough time to settle in." "More than sufficient, thank you." As they spoke, Daisy became aware of a commotion further down the street. A group of cowboys had ridden in, dust-covered and rowdy. At their center was a tall man with broad shoulders, his face shadowed by his hat. Unlike his companions, he moved with a quiet authority that drew the eye. "That's the Circle M crew," Becker explained, following her gaze. "Coming in for supplies. The tall one's Alexander McCall, owns the biggest spread in the county." Daisy watched as Alexander McCall dismounted with fluid grace. He removed his hat, revealing dark hair and a face tanned by the sun. Even from a distance, there was something compelling about him. "Come along," Becker said. "I'll introduce you to Mrs. Holloway's family." Daisy nodded, tearing her eyes away from the cowboy. She had not come to Sweetwater to notice men, no matter how striking. She had come to disappear, to become the unassuming schoolteacher Daisy Caldwell, and to stay alive. The Holloway home was modest but comfortable, with a parlor that smelled of beeswax and lemon oil. Rose Holloway, the daughter-in-law Mrs. Holloway had mentioned, showed Daisy to a small bedroom at the rear of the house. "It's not much," Rose apologized, "but it's clean and private." "It's perfect," Daisy assured her. "I'm grateful for your hospitality." After Rose left, Daisy unpacked her few belongings. From a hidden compartment in her trunk, she removed a small photograph herself in a ball gown, her father standing proudly beside her. The only remnant of Diana Beaumont's life. She touched it briefly before hiding it beneath her undergarments in the dresser drawer. That evening, over a simple but hearty dinner, Daisy met James Holloway, the general store proprietor, and their 2 children. Conversation flowed easily, focusing on town gossip and the upcoming school term. 32 students, James informed her. Ages 6 to 16. Most are good kids, but there are a few troublemakers. There always are, Daisy replied with a smile. In Boston, she had volunteered at a charity school in the poor district. Teaching wasn't entirely new to her, though she'd never done it professionally. The McCall boy is one to watch, Rose added. Bright as they come, but stubborn as his father, Alexander McCall's son. Daisy asked, remembering the tall rancher. Yes, Daniel, 12 years old and too smart for his own good. His mother died 5 years back, been raised by his father and the ranch hands since. Daisy nodded, filing away the information. I'll keep an eye on him. Later, unable to sleep in the unfamiliar bed, Daisy sat by the window, gazing at the stars that seemed so much brighter here than in Boston. She thought of her father, alone now in their family home. Had there been more attempts on their lives, was he safe? The questions circled endlessly, with no answers forthcoming. The school building sat at the edge of town, a simple clapboard structure with a bell tower. When Daisy arrived on Monday morning, several children were already waiting in the yard. They fell silent as she approached, eyeing her curiously. Good morning, she said brightly. I'm Miss Caldwell, your new teacher. A chorus of mumbled greetings answered her. Daisy unlocked the door and entered, the children following like ducklings. The classroom was basic rows of desks facing a larger desk and blackboard, a pot-bellied stove in the corner, and bookshelves along one wall. As the morning progressed, more students arrived. Daisy took attendance, matching names to faces. Daniel McCall was among the last to enter, tall for his age with his father's dark hair and a challenging look in his eyes. You're late, Mr. McCall, Daisy said calmly. Horse through a shoe, he replied, not quite meeting her eyes. Take your seat, please. The morning went smoothly as Daisy assessed her students' abilities, separating them into groups based on their reading and arithmetic skills. She was pleased to find most were eager to learn, though a few of the older boys seemed determined to test her authority. At noon, the children spilled into the yard with their lunch pails. Daisy remained at her desk, reviewing her notes and planning afternoon lessons. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice the visitor until a shadow fell across her papers. Alexander McCall stood in the doorway, hat in hand. Up close, he was even more imposing, tall and broad-shouldered, with keen gray eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to reveal. Miss Caldwell, he said, his voice deep and measured. I wanted to introduce myself. Alex McCall. Daisy rose, smoothing her skirts. Mr. McCall, please come in. He stepped inside, his spurs jangling softly. My son mentioned we have a new teacher. Thought I should come meet you since Daniel can be a handful. He seems bright, Daisy offered diplomatically. A smile touched the corner of McCall's mouth. Diplomatic as well as pretty. Yes, he's bright. Also stubborn and too used to having his own way. His mother would have known how to handle him better. The mention of his late wife softened his expression momentarily. I'm sorry for your loss, Daisy said sincerely. It was 5 years ago. Daniel barely remembers her now. McCall looked around the classroom. You come highly recommended from back east, Mr. Becker tells me. Daisy felt a flicker of alarm. Had someone been asking questions about her? I taught at a school in Pennsylvania for several years, she said, repeating the fiction her father had created. McCall nodded, studying her with those perceptive eyes. Well, Miss Caldwell, if my son gives you any trouble, you let me know. We believe in discipline at the Circle M. I'm sure that won't be necessary, Mr. McCall. I can handle my students. I believe you can. His gaze held hers a moment longer than was comfortable. Good day, Miss Caldwell. Daisy watched him leave, aware of a strange flutter in her chest. Alexander McCall was certainly an imposing figure, the kind of man who commanded attention without trying, the kind of man who noticed things. That made him dangerous to someone with secrets. The weeks passed, and Daisy settled into life in Sweetwater. She established a routine teaching during the day, taking meals with the Holloways, and spending evenings grading papers or reading. On Sundays, she attended the small church with her hosts, nodding politely to her students' parents. Occasionally, she would spot Alexander McCall in town, usually on business at the bank or the general store. He always tipped his hat to her, sometimes stopping for brief conversation. Despite her reservations, Daisy found herself looking forward to these encounters. Daniel proved to be as challenging as his father had warned, but Daisy discovered he responded well to responsibility. She appointed him class monitor for the younger children's reading lessons, and his behavior improved markedly. One afternoon in late October, Daisy kept Daniel after school to discuss his arithmetic progress. "You're doing much better," she told him, showing him his latest test. "Your father will be proud." Daniel shrugged, but she could see he was pleased. "Pa says numbers are important for ranching. Gotta know how many cattle you have, how much feed they need, that sort of thing." He's right. "Do you want to be a rancher like him when you grow up?" "Yes, madam." "Circle Mtik's been in our family 3 generations. Pa says someday it'll be mine." As they talked, the sky darkened outside and rain began to fall. It quickly became a downpour, drumming on the school's roof. "You'd better wait it out," Daisy said, concerned. "Did you ride your horse today?" Daniel nodded. "Thunder's under the shelter out back. He won't mind the rain." They continued their discussion, moving on to Daniel's reading assignment. The rain showed no sign of letting up. If anything, it intensified with occasional rumbles of thunder in the distance. "Daniel." A voice called from outside, followed by the school door bursting open. Alexander McCall stood there, dripping wet, concern evident on his face. "Are you all right, son?" "Yes, Pa. Miss Caldwell was just helping me with my arithmetic." Relief flooded McCall's features. "When you didn't come home, I worried. This storm's getting worse." "I thought it best he wait rather than ride in such weather," Daisy explained. McCall nodded, water running from his hat brim. "You were right to keep him here, thank you." He looked around the empty classroom. "Are you planning to wait out the storm as well, Miss Caldwell?" "I had intended to walk back to the Holloways once it eased a bit." Another crash of thunder shook the building, followed by a flash of lightning that illuminated McCall's skeptical expression. "That's not happening anytime soon," he said. "My wagon's outside. I'll take you both." Daisy hesitated. Being alone with Alexander McCall, even with Daniel present, seemed somehow improper. Yet the alternative was waiting out what could be hours of storm in the darkening schoolhouse. "Thank you," she finally agreed. "Let me gather my things." McCall's wagon was sturdy, with a canvas cover that kept out most of the rain. Daniel climbed in first, then McCall offered his hand to Daisy. His grip was warm and strong, and for a moment, as he helped her up, their faces were close enough that she could see the raindrops clinging to his eyelashes. They drove through the downpour, McCall handling the team with expertise despite the poor visibility. When they reached the Holloway house, he insisted on escorting Daisy to the door, holding his slicker over her head. "Thank you, Mr. McCall," she said, aware of Mrs. Holloway watching through the window. "Alex," he corrected. "Most folks here just call me Alex." "Then thank you, Alex." His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "You're welcome, Miss Caldwell." "Daisy," she found herself saying, "if we're to use given names." "Daisy," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "It suits you." He tipped his hat and returned to the wagon where Daniel waited. Daisy watched them drive away before entering the house, aware that she was smiling despite the drenching rain. That night, as she prepared for bed, Daisy caught herself humming. It had been so long since she'd felt light-hearted, so long since she'd allowed herself to enjoy a man's company without fear. But that was dangerous thinking. She wasn't Daisy Caldwell, unattached schoolteacher. She was Diana Beaumont, hunted and in hiding. Any attachment, any connection, put not only her at risk but others as well. She opened her dresser drawer and took out the photograph of herself and her father, reminding herself of who she really was and why she was here. November brought colder weather and the excitement of the Thanksgiving social. The entire town would gather for a feast and dance in the community hall. Rose Holloway insisted Daisy needed a new dress for the occasion. "You can't wear black to a social," Rose declared, fingering the fabric of Daisy's morning dress. "It's been what, 2 years since your husband passed? Surely that's long enough." Daisy hesitated. Her fictional husband, Thomas Caldwell, had indeed died 2 years ago, according to her story. And she had been wearing subdued colors as part of her disguise, making herself less noticeable. "Perhaps you're right," she conceded. "Something in blue, maybe." Rose clapped her hands. "Blue would be perfect with your coloring. We'll order fabric from the catalog today." The blue dress, when finished, was simpler than anything Diana Beaumont would have worn to a Boston ball, but more elegant than Daisy Caldwell's usual attire. The color brought out her eyes, and when she tried it on, even Mrs. Holloway remarked on the transformation. "You look like a different person," the older woman said admiringly. The words sent a chill through Daisy. That was exactly what she didn't want to stand out, to be noticed, to be remembered if anyone came asking questions. On the evening of the social, she almost changed her mind, almost reached for her black dress. But Rose was so excited, and refusing now would require explanations Daisy couldn't give. The community hall was festively decorated with corn husks, pumpkins, and paper chains made by the schoolchildren. Tables groaned under the weight of food: roast turkeys, hams, pies of every description, and cakes frosted in autumn colors. Daisy arrived with the Holloways, greeting her students and their parents. The atmosphere was festive, with a small band setting up on a platform at one end of the hall. "Miss Caldwell," a familiar voice said behind her. She turned to find Alexander McCall, dressed in his Sunday best dark trousers, a crisp white shirt, and a black string tie. His son stood beside him, looking uncomfortable in similar attire. "Mr. McCall, Daniel, happy Thanksgiving." "You look beautiful," Alex said without preamble, his eyes taking in her blue dress. Daisy felt herself blushing. "Thank you, you both look very handsome." Daniel tugged at his collar. "This tie's choking me, Pa," Alex laughed. "You'll survive, son, go find your friends." As Daniel darted away, Alex turned back to Daisy. "Save me a dance." Before she could respond, the town mayor called everyone to the tables for the feast. Daisy found herself seated between Mrs. Holloway and the banker's wife, with Alex at another table across the room. Throughout the meal, she was aware of his gaze occasionally finding hers. After dinner, the tables were cleared and the band struck up a lively tune. Couples took to the floor and Daisy watched, tapping her foot to the music. "Miss Caldwell." Alex appeared before her, hand extended. "May I have this dance?" She should refuse. Dancing meant closeness, conversation, questions she might not be prepared to answer, but his smile was warm and it had been so long since she danced. "Yes," she said, placing her hand in his. Alex led her onto the floor, his hand at her waist, respectful but firm. He moved with surprising grace for such a large man, guiding her through the steps of the waltz. "You dance well," Daisy remarked, surprised. "My mother insisted on lessons." Said no son of hers would clump around a dance floor like a bear. His eyes twinkled. "You seem surprised. I suppose I didn't expect a rancher to be so accomplished. There's a lot about me that might surprise you, Daisy." The way he said her name, soft and intimate, made her heart beat faster. They danced in silence for a few moments, and Daisy became acutely aware of his hand at her waist, the slight pressure of his fingers, the scent of him soap and leather, and something uniquely his own. "You're not what I expected either," he said finally. "Oh. And what did you expect in a schoolteacher? Someone older, sterner, less." He searched for the word. "Less alive." Daisy laughed despite herself. "I'm not sure if that's a compliment." "It is." His expression grew serious. "You hide it well, but there's fire in you, Daisy Caldwell. I noticed it the first time we met." The music ended, and Alex stepped back, though he kept hold of her hand. "Thank you for the dance." "My pleasure," she replied, unsettled by his perception. For the rest of the evening, Daisy was aware of Alex's presence, even when they were across the room from each other. She danced with James Holloway and several fathers of her students, but none affected her the way Alex had. As the evening wound down, she stepped outside for a breath of air. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliant in the black sky. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Alex's voice came from the shadows. He moved to stand beside her at the railing. "You don't see stars like this in the big cities." "No," Daisy agreed, thinking of Boston's gas-lit streets. "You don't." Where are you from originally, Daisy? The question, casual as it seemed, put her on guard. Pennsylvania, as I mentioned. Which part? A small town outside Philadelphia. She kept her voice light. Nothing as exciting as Sweetwater, he chuckled. Not many would call Sweetwater exciting. It has its moments. They stood in companionable silence watching the stars. Daisy was aware of his warmth beside her, the solid presence of him. I should go back inside, she said finally. The Holloways will be looking for me. Alex nodded. Of course. But as she turned to leave, he touched her arm. Daisy. She looked up at him, and in the moonlight his expression was unreadable. I'd like to call on you properly. Sunday after church, perhaps. Daisy's heart raced. This was exactly what she'd been trying to avoid: personal connections, attachments that would make her memorable, visible. I don't think that would be wise, Mr. McCall. Back to Mr. McCall, is it? His voice held a trace of humor. May I ask why it wouldn't be wise? Because I'm not who you think I am. Because I'm hiding from people who want me dead. Because getting close to me could put you in danger. It wouldn't be proper, she said instead. I'm the teacher and Daniel is my student. Daniel thinks very highly of you. I don't think he'd object. Nevertheless, I must decline. Good night, Mr. McCall. She returned to the hall, her heart pounding. She'd been foolish to dance with him, to encourage his attention in any way. From now on, she would keep her distance. Winter descended on Sweetwater, turning the prairie white and the creek to ice. Christmas approached, and Daisy helped her students prepare a pageant for their parents. She avoided being alone with Alex, though he tipped his hat whenever they met in town and inquired politely after Daniel's progress at school. 2 days before Christmas, Daisy was walking home from school, her arms full of papers to grade, when she heard the pounding of hooves. Looking up, she saw a rider approaching at speed. Alex, his face grim, he reined in sharply beside her. Daisy, thank God I found you. What's wrong? Is it Daniel? No, he's fine, it's about you. He dismounted, leading his horse as he fell into step beside her. A man's been asking questions about you in town. Daisy's blood ran cold. What kind of questions? Detailed ones. Where you came from, how long you've been here, whether you receive many letters. He showed your photograph to Tom at the livery. My photograph. Her voice was barely a whisper. Yes, a younger version of you in fancier clothes. He's calling you Diana Beaumont. Daisy stopped walking, the world tilting beneath her feet. Did Tom recognize me? No, said it didn't look much like you, but Daisy. Alex's expression was troubled. Who is this man? What does he want with you? She couldn't speak, couldn't find words. After all these months, they'd found her. Her sanctuary was shattered. Daisy, Alex said urgently, taking her by the shoulders. Talk to me, are you in danger? The concern in his eyes broke something inside her. Yes, she whispered. I have to leave, tonight. Not until you tell me what's happening. Who is Diana Beaumont? Daisy looked around frantically, but the street was empty save for them. I can't talk here. My house is closest, we'll go there. She nodded, and he helped her onto his horse, mounting behind her. His arms encircled her as he took the reins, and despite her fear, Daisy was aware of his solid presence at her back, the security of being held by him. Alex's house was a modest 2-story structure on the edge of town, comfortable but not ostentatious. He led her inside to a cozy parlor, taking her coat and gesturing for her to sit by the fire. Daniel's at a friend's house until supper, he explained. We have privacy. Now please tell me what's going on. Daisy took a deep breath. My real name is Diana Beaumont. My father is General William Beaumont of the Union Army. Alex's expression remained neutral. Go on. During the war, my father led campaigns in Tennessee and Georgia. He was effective. Ruthless, some would say. He made enemies. She twisted her hands in her lap. After the war, those enemies nursed their grievances. Some lost everything: land, family, fortune. They blamed my father. And they're still seeking revenge after all these years. Yes. 6 months ago, someone tried to kill me. 3 attempts in 2 weeks. My father arranged my death and sent me west with a new identity. He thought I'd be safe here. Alex studied her, his gray eyes thoughtful, and the man asking questions, likely a hired gun, the gray fox they call him. He's killed others who crossed the men hunting us. Why tell me this? You've kept your secret all these months. Daisy met his gaze steadily. Because you deserve to know the danger, because she hesitated, because I trust you, Alex. He moved to sit beside her, taking her cold hands in his warm ones. "You were right to trust me. I won't let anyone hurt you. You don't understand. These men are dangerous. They won't stop. Neither will I." His voice was steel. "Daisy, Diana, Daisy," she interrupted. "I've been Daisy longer than I was ever Diana." Something softened in his expression. "Daisy, then, you're not alone anymore. We'll figure this out together." She wanted desperately to believe him, to lean on his strength, but she'd seen what these men could do. "I should leave. My presence puts everyone in danger, you, Daniel, the Holloways, my students. Running won't solve anything. They found you here, they'll find you elsewhere." "Then what do you suggest?" Alex's jaw set determinedly. "We fight back." The plan Alex proposed was simple in concept, difficult in execution. They would set a trap for the Gray Fox, capturing him and forcing him to reveal who had hired him. With that information, they could go to the federal authorities. "These men are powerful," Daisy warned. "They have connections in government. So does your father, I imagine," Alex countered. "A Union general must still have friends in high places." He was right. Her father had corresponded with senators, congressmen, even the president, but reaching out to him meant risking exposure. "I haven't contacted him since I arrived here," she admitted. "It was too dangerous. It's more dangerous now not to." Alex squeezed her hand. "Write to him. Use my name as a signal that you're in trouble. I'll send one of my most trusted men to deliver it personally." Daisy nodded slowly. "What about the Gray Fox? He'll come looking for you. When he does, he'll find me instead." The plan required Daisy to continue her normal routine while Alex and his ranch hands kept watch. The Gray Fox had been staying at the hotel, posing as a cattle buyer. He'd been described to Alex as a medium-built man with light hair and a thin mustache, unremarkable except for his cold eyes. "I don't like using you as bait," Alex said as they finalized their strategy. "I don't see an alternative. He needs to believe I'm unaware of his presence." Alex's expression was grim. "If anything happened to you." The unfinished thought hung between them, heavy with meaning. Daisy reached out impulsively, touching his cheek. "I'll be careful." He caught her hand, pressing it to his lips in a gesture that made her heart race. "See that you are." That evening, Alex escorted Daisy back to the Holloways, explaining they'd met by chance and he'd walked her home. For the next 3 days, Daisy taught her classes as usual, feeling the constant pressure of being watched. Alex or one of his men was always nearby, shadowing her movements without being obvious. On the 4th day, as school was dismissing, Daisy noticed a stranger standing across the street, observing the children as they left. He was exactly as described: medium height, light hair, thin mustache. The Gray Fox. She forced herself to act normally, waving goodbye to her students and returning inside to gather her things. Her hands trembled as she collected her books, knowing what would come next. As planned, she left by the back door, taking the path that led behind the buildings toward the Holloway house. The route was less traveled, bordered by trees that provided cover for Alex and his men. She had gone perhaps 50 yards when she heard footsteps behind her. Fighting the urge to run, Daisy maintained her pace. "Miss Beaumont," a voice called. "Or should I say Miss Caldwell?" Daisy stopped, turning slowly. The Gray Fox stood 10 feet away, a pistol held casually at his side. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "My name is Daisy Caldwell." "Let's not play games." He stepped closer. "You're coming with me. My employers want to speak with you personally." "I think not." The voice came from behind the Gray Fox. Alex emerged from the trees, his own gun drawn. "Drop your weapon." The Gray Fox spun, firing wildly. Alex dove to the side, returning fire as Daisy threw herself to the ground. More shots rang out as Alex's men converged from their hiding places. When the gunfire ceased, Daisy raised her head to see the Gray Fox lying motionless, Alex kneeling beside him checking for signs of life. "He's dead," Alex announced grimly. Daisy struggled to her feet, shaking. "Now we'll never know who sent him." "Perhaps not, but we did find this." Alex held up a folded paper. It was in his pocket. The paper contained a list of names, 3 of them with addresses in Richmond, Atlanta, and New Orleans. Confederate officers who had lost everything in the war, men with long-standing grudges against General Beaumont. "We have what we need," Alex said, helping Daisy to a nearby bench. My man left with your letter yesterday. Now we wait for your father's response. News of the shooting spread quickly through Sweetwater. The official story, supported by the sheriff, was that the Gray Fox was a wanted man who had resisted arrest. No connection to Daisy was mentioned, though speculation ran rampant. 2 weeks later, Daisy was teaching arithmetic when a commotion outside drew her attention. A carriage had pulled up in front of the school, finer than any usually seen in Sweetwater. From it emerged a distinguished older man in a military greatcoat. "Father," Daisy whispered, her chalk dropping from suddenly nerveless fingers. General William Beaumont strode into the classroom, his bearing commanding despite his 60 years. Behind him came 2 younger men, clearly federal marshals by their badges and bearing. "Diana," he said, his voice catching. "My dear girl." The children stared in confusion as their teacher rushed into the arms of the stranger, tears streaming down her face. "Class dismissed," Daisy managed to say. "Early recess today." As the children filed out, buzzing with excitement, General Beaumont turned to the marshals. "Secure the area. I want to speak with my daughter privately." Once they were alone, he held Daisy at arm's length, examining her face. "You look well, if a bit too thin. This place has been good for you." "Yes, father, very good." She hesitated. "How did you find me so quickly?" "Your letter arrived just as we were closing in on the conspirators. 3 former Confederate officers had formed a pact to destroy me by taking what I loved most, you. We've arrested 2 already. The 3rd won't be far behind. It's over, truly over. Yes, my dear, you can come home now." Back to Boston, to your real life. Daisy felt the world tilt again, but for a different reason. Home, Boston, Diana Beaumont's life. "I need to speak with Alex, Mr. McCall," she said. "He's the one who helped me, who saved my life. The rancher. Yes, I look forward to thanking him properly. A substantial reward would be appropriate." "No, father, it's not about money." Daisy took a deep breath. "I need to speak with him alone first, before any decisions are made." General Beaumont's eyebrows rose, but he nodded. "I see, very well. We're staying at the hotel. Join me for dinner when you've concluded your conversation with Mr. McCall." Daisy found Alex at his house, having heard about the arrival of the grand carriage and the military man. Daniel was at school, and the house was quiet as she knocked on the door. "Your father," Alex said as he led her to the parlor. "I recognize him from your photograph." "Yes, he came as soon as he received my letter. The men who were hunting me have been arrested. It's over, Alex. I'm safe." Relief washed over his features. "Thank God." Then his expression sobered. "So you'll be returning to Boston?" It wasn't a question, but Daisy answered anyway. "That's what my father expects." "And what do you expect, Daisy? Or should I call you Diana now?" "Daisy," she said firmly. "I told you before, I've been Daisy longer than I was ever Diana." "At least it feels that way." Alex moved closer, taking her hands in his. "And what does Daisy want?" The question hung between them, laden with possibility. Daisy looked up into his gray eyes and found her answer. "Daisy wants to stay in Sweetwater," she said softly. "She wants to continue teaching. She wants." Her courage almost failed her, but she pushed on. "She wants you, Alex, if you want her to." His answer was to pull her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that spoke of relief, of joy, of a future neither had dared hope for. When they finally parted, both breathless, Alex rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the Thanksgiving social," he admitted. "Since before that, if I'm honest. Even knowing I was living a lie, you were protecting yourself. I understand that better than most." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "But the woman I fell in love with, her heart, her spirit, her courage that was no lie, that was all Daisy." "Daisy and Diana are the same person," she said. "I've just forgotten how to be Diana, then be Daisy, be the woman I love. Stay here with me and Daniel." Her heart soared at his words. "You love me, more than I thought possible after losing Emily. You brought color back into my world, Daisy." She kissed him again, joy bubbling up inside her. "I love you too, Alex. I tried not to, but I couldn't help myself." The conversation with her father that evening was difficult. General Beaumont had expected his daughter to return to Boston, to resume her life as Diana Beaumont, perhaps even to make the society marriage he had once hoped for. "You can't seriously be considering staying in this frontier town," he said incredulously. I am more than considering it, father. I've decided. This is my home now. Because of this rancher, Diana, you barely know the man. I know him well enough to love him, she replied steadily. And he loves me, not Diana Beaumont of Boston, but Daisy Caldwell of Sweetwater. Her father's expression softened. You truly care for him. I do, more than I can express. And your teaching, that's not just part of your disguise. No. I've discovered I have a gift for it, and I enjoy it immensely. General Beaumont was silent for a long moment. Your mother would have been proud of the woman you've become, he said finally. Strong, independent, following your heart. Tears pricked Daisy's eyes. Do I have your blessing, father? If this is truly what you want, yes. Though I expect to be invited to the wedding, whenever that may be, she hugged him tightly. Of course, you'll want to meet Daniel as well, Alex's son. He's 12 and brilliant with numbers. A grandson already, her father murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Your mother would have loved that. Spring came to Sweetwater in a riot of wildflowers and new grass. Daisy continued teaching, though now everyone knew her true identity. Far from causing problems, the revelation had made her something of a local celebrity. The children were fascinated by her story, especially when the newspaper in the county seat ran an article about the conspiracy against General Beaumont and his daughter's bravery. On a warm Saturday in May, Daisy became Mrs. Alexander McCall in a ceremony at the small church. She wore a gown of ivory satin sent by her father, but with a wreath of local wildflowers in her hair. Daniel stood proudly as his father's best man, while Rose Holloway served as Daisy's matron of honor. General Beaumont gave his daughter away, his military bearing softened by the emotion of the day. The entire town turned out for the celebration afterward, with tables set up in the town square and dancing until midnight. Later, as Alex carried her over the threshold of their home, her home now, too, Daisy felt a sense of rightness, of belonging, that she had never experienced in Boston. Happy, Mrs. McCall? Alex asked, setting her gently on her feet in their bedroom. Happier than I ever imagined possible, she replied, reaching up to touch his beloved face. Who would have thought that pretending to be someone else would lead me to discover who I truly am? And who is that? He asked, his arms encircling her waist. I'm Daisy McCall, she said with certainty. Teacher, stepmother, wife, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. 5 years later, Daisy stood on the porch of the Circle M ranch house, watching as Alex taught their 3-year-old daughter, Emily, to sit on her first pony. Daniel, now 17 and nearly as tall as his father, stood by, offering advice and encouragement to his little sister. General Beaumont, retired now and a frequent visitor to the ranch, sat in a rocking chair beside Daisy, their 1-year-old son William asleep in his arms. I was wrong to want you back in Boston, he admitted, not for the first time. You belong here. Daisy smiled, her gaze fixed on her husband's laughing face as Emily clutched the pony's mane. Yes, I do. She still taught at the school 3 days a week, sharing the position with a younger woman who had moved to Sweetwater last year. The rest of her time was devoted to her family and the ranch, which had prospered under Alex's management. Daniel would be heading to college in the fall, the first McCall to pursue higher education with plans to return and apply modern techniques to ranching. As she watched her family, Daisy reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had come to Sweetwater as Diana Beaumont, pretending to be Daisy Caldwell, a woman who didn't exist. Yet somehow, in the pretending, she had discovered her true self, not the Boston socialite or the fictional widow, but a woman with courage, conviction, and an open heart. Look, Mama, Emily called, sitting straight and proud on her pony. I'm riding, wonderful darling. Daisy called back, her heart full. Alex looked up, meeting her eyes across the yard. His smile, still capable of making her heart race after 5 years of marriage, spoke volumes of love, of partnership, of a future built on truth rather than deception. Diana Beaumont had died in a fictional carriage accident years ago. Daisy Caldwell had been a necessary fiction. But Daisy McCall, she was real, more real than any identity Daisy had ever known. And as her husband led their daughter's pony toward the house, their son walked beside them, and her father rocked her baby boy, Daisy knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just safety in Sweetwater, but the life she was meant to live all along.